Benvingudes i benvinguts de nou.
Welcome back to the very last session of this part of the Time Use Week held in the Paraninf this week. This session, as yesterday's afternoon session, is meant to be a more in-depth sort of workshop discussion. The title of this one is, let me get this right, Designing Time Policies from a Transversal or a cross-cutting perspective. And that's why I will be both the moderator and one of the panelists. And I will share this space with Miriam Martinez, Officer for Feminism and LGTBI, and in the Barcelona City's Council. So I will be telling you more about the theory, and she will be telling you about a specific instance in Barcelona City Council. I'll start, and then I'll hand over to you. So can we have the PowerPoint? What I will be presenting is mainly a tool that's available from our website. A tool that's about the need for cross-cuttingness in time use policies. The presentation is in English, but I'll be speaking Catalan. I apologize for the code switching. Well, so let's talk about basic terms. We talk about cross-cuttingness, about transversality. Sometimes it's not clear what we mean. Maybe we should start by defining what we mean by time use policies or time policies. We'll go over this quickly, but I do think it bears reminding us all. It's well worth reminding ourselves of the fact that we're talking about tools for designing policies. We're trying to make time policies cross-cutting. We want to make them apply to every kind of policy implemented by a government body. Time is everywhere. Whenever we adopt some measure, we are having an impact on people's time. And ideally, we would want this impact to be a positive one. So this is my belief. I believe that this is a key part of 21st century policies. We've talked about gender, sustainability, climate change, and work. And I feel these are central to our times. Here's another important point, and I know you know about this, but it's well worth going over. We have to know why we do things. When we implement policies, we have to think in terms of time, and we also need to think in terms of all of this. We're trying to create virtuous circles, and that's one of the nice things about time policies. The fact that you create virtuous circles where one good thing leads to another. So we talk about these four main benefits: equality, health, efficiency, and sustainability. We've heard about different examples, and here you have some examples of what we mean by this, shown on the slide. Ultimately, this is all about public policy, but what we all do in our daily work is create a narrative as to what we do and why we do it and what we do it for, so that we can start thinking of time policies differently. This session is about time use policies at the urban level. So I'd like to remind us of why we're talking about the local level. We've had several sessions about it. The point is that we're talking about people's daily lives, and that's why it makes sense to focus on the local level. And in fact, in the previous session, we talked about 20 years of tempo territorial, it is local bodies that have always pioneered this kind of policy. Here are some pictures. It's propaganda for our network. Four different time agendas. If we took everything on board, we would be talking about 200 plus time use policies implemented at the local level. This is a tool you can find in our website under publications. It's a self-evaluation tool, a self-assessment tool. Sorry. This enables us to step back from our role and think of time use policies from an overall perspective, because whenever, as I said earlier, whenever we design any individual policy, we have to think of what it means in terms of time. This tool was set up so that any city can, on the one hand, determine whether it is already implementing time use policies without necessarily being aware of it, and also so that the assessment can be used as a baseline. What it does is structure different areas so to make sure it goes over the key areas in which a local government might implement time use policies. It doesn't cover everything, but it is a starting point for a broader approach to better organization of time. Yesterday, we had the presentation of the Provincial Council's guide. This is also a tool that can be used for a baseline assessment. The tool is split into two parts. First, you diagnose time-related policies that target citizens, and the second half is time policies targeting public servants, officials who work for the municipality, officials and other employees. As I said, the idea is not to cover everything under the sun. The idea is to start to trigger a conversation. There are many potential time use policies. They are grouped by areas. And the idea is for the town council to go around every department to determine whether any policy along these lines has already been implemented, whether it hasn't been implemented, there's no way it will ever be implemented, or whether it hasn't been implemented, but it might be a good idea to do so. It's pretty easy to fill in. It's self-explanatory, and it gives local councils a chance to determine what is there, what could be done, and what can be ruled out. This can be done in working groups, that can be done separately by individual departments, according to how the local council is organized. But it can always be used one way or another. After filling in the questionnaire, then you have the results, and the idea is to be able to create an action plan for time use policies for the local council. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but we've heard more than once that it's all very well to talk about time use policies for larger towns, but for really small ones, well, they just don't have the time. So the idea is to decide which policies are a priority and then get started. We firmly believe that there's no need to start with everything all at once. It's best to choose something small that will make sense to the local population. After all, the purpose of what we do is to improve life for our citizens or residents. And that is the measure of our impact. This is a workshop, so we are going to carry out a brief exercise and diagnosis amongst those of us who are here. I have listed citizen targeting policies here, not the ones that are inward-looking, that target officials and public employees. So here we have different kinds of policies. Gender equality and co-responsibility. I list a few examples, such as campaigns for shared responsibility, caregiving services that are proximity-based, breathing spaces, and so on and so forth. Number 2 is mobility and sustainability. It mentions urban design models that promote a proximity-based approach, the 15-minute city or just proximity at large in broader terms. We've also heard this week about regulating mobility to reduce rush hour, and facilitate commuting, and so on and so forth. Then we have business time organization, not within the council, but outside of it. Obviously, working hours are usually regulated on a central level or regulated by collective bargaining agreements. And so, the good practices that we've identified at the local government level involve promotion of good practices at workplaces in the town. I mean, we'll hear some specific examples, but anyway, it's a promotion of teleworking and so on and so forth. Education. Usually, local councils are not directly responsible for education, but there are a lot of interesting initiatives regarding education, well, extracurricular education, after-school education. So we can talk about what kind of services are offered to children and how we care for them once school is over. That was also mentioned earlier. Opening up schools outside of school hours is one possibility. Polychronism, I believe, was a term suggested, meaning that the space can be used for different kinds of activities and so on and so forth. Next is nighttime policies, mentioned explicitly and also implicitly. We have practices such as the night chief officer or night mayor or whatever we want to call it, and then a series of cogent policies that help us reconsider what our night looks like. Number 6 is democracy and citizen services. The idea is to give citizens better access to municipal services and to participation in democratic procedures. Partly, through the very scheduling of activities and public events or meetings with associations and so on and so forth. Number 7, leisure, culture, and associations. This is again about when we do things, when we schedule things, especially culture. There are certain cultural events that have traditional hours that we seldom dare to touch, and maybe we have to consider doing that differently. And then lastly, we have awareness raising. We have, assessing how to govern all this. So there would be the appointment of a time chief officer to oversee time policies. And there would also be, awareness-raising campaigns to disseminate results and findings and so on and so forth. And of course, this person should have access to every department in the local council in order to really make this a cross-cutting approach. This classification has an element of arbitrariness, and there could be a lot of added groups and subgroups and so on. But we feel that maybe small councils might find this helpful in terms of getting started implementing these kinds of policies. Since there aren't very many of us here this afternoon, and since I'm seeing quite a few faces from local and regional governments, I'd just like us to have a short hand-raising exercise, because many governments have time-use policies that they're not aware of. So I'll just read out the different items, and if you're not working for a local council, then maybe think of your town, of your own local council or your own town or village, and try to figure out whether it has that kind of policy. So first, gender equality and co-responsibility. Raise your hand if you think such policies are carried out in your local council. I don't see many. Julienne, tell Marina. I'm not seeing a lot of raised hands. Show of hands, please. 10. Let's make that 12. Mobility and sustainability policies. Proximity, managing rush hour. At least those of you who work in the same city, who live in the same city, should all raise your hands. Business time organization. 4. Education policies in terms of expanding space for education. I see there's plenty of success on that front. Okay, great. Nighttime policies. I'm talking about a consistent or a coherent set of rules. Oh, so-so, huh? There's still room for improvement, huh? Okay. Democracy and citizen services. For instance, digitizing municipal services. That one's also so-so. Leisure, culture, and association life. Modifying hours for events to be more inclusive. Okay. And then more governance-related approaches. If you have a unit specifically allocated to time use policies or some kind of awareness raising space, there's even less of that, right? Well, these are interesting findings. I really felt that we would find more in the field of gender. This is an absolutely not representative sample here in this room, so I apologize to statisticians, but it looks as though amongst those, the towns represented here, education seems to be the area that has been more successful, and followed by gender, mobility, and culture. So, my take home here is that what we presented yesterday on the plan for the local plans for time use policies and the creation of a nighttime officer and so on and so forth, it is something that really needs to be tackled to go beyond the individual policy level and come up with an overarching plan for this purpose. Now, you work for the local council, for the city council in Barcelona. What do you think of this list? What do you think we should start working on hardest in Barcelona? Well, some of my colleagues raised their hands for everything. I didn't. This classification is similar to our own classification of time use policies. Obviously, there's always room for improvement. It's also important to raise awareness of the fact that this is an omnipresent dimension, that it's cross-cutting. So you have departments or areas focusing on individual aspects, but then it's also important to have somebody with the cross-cutting perspective, so that any kind of policy that's designed is analyzed from a time use perspective. Something we and other towns have encountered is the fact that sometimes we're implementing time use policies without realizing it. I was also struck by the fact that education topped the list. Perhaps we're more aware of this particular dimension, but it's a good idea for time use to be kept in mind overall. Okay, there will be time for questions at the end, but now, in order to take this theoretical level down to the ground, we have asked the city of Barcelona to come and share with us how they managed to make their time use policies cross-cutting. So I'll give you the floor if it's okay with you. Okay. Yes, we have to switch the slides.
Bé, quan ens vau proposar aquest espai, no, just...
When we were offered this time slot, we thought we would talk about time as a social policy. We thought we would talk to you about the time compact or the time pact and the NUST network, just to explain what Barcelona has done. I don't want to tell you about everything in Barcelona City Council, but it's been quite a few years since Barcelona started talking about time use policies. Barcelona was, in fact, among the first, if not the first, city in Spain to create a council portfolio for the uses of time. And you can see different landmark decisions. We were the first world time capital. So while there's plenty of room for improvement, there's also plenty that other smaller towns could work with and follow in our footsteps. It's very important to have a dialogue and a cooperation with all social agents. That's really important. The city has its own role to play, but then you have the population and also businesses and associations. And we have to be constantly supporting the local productive fabric, the local business fabric, because we need to promote structural change, and this can only be done by listening to others. And that is why Barcelona came to pioneer innovative and participatory policies. So we continue to operate within this space in response to the situation as it evolves. Just because we've been working for over 20 years doesn't mean we can stop working, because everything evolves as life itself evolves. So you are aware of the Time Compact and the NUST network. These are two key initiatives that help promote a more efficient, fair, and sustainable organization of time, both in the sphere of work and in the social sphere. They both seek to address the real needs of people in terms of the demands posed by modern living in a city such as Barcelona, which is always on the move, always a high-energy place. So we find that these two particular spaces are key areas for us to put our ear on the ground and be aware of the key needs. The Time Compact was created quite a few years ago. It was meant to be sustainable. We can now tell you that there are over 300 organizations that have signed on. So we're not working there on our own. We're working with organizations and bodies. And what we're doing there is trying to ensure a use of time that improves, that enhances quality of life and reinforces productivity and collective well-being. The process followed there is based on consensus and cooperation amongst all participants. It's also a chance for the local government to leave its own spaces and enter the spaces of organizations and companies. So we tried to achieve active participation from all members. Following the same lines as Ariadna described for self-assessment, we identified 7 axes, 7 main lines of work. First, time and health. It's about respecting circadian rhythms and biological clocks. Then we have, time and care. We have to learn values. Time and education. We're learning about values, values surrounding time, but also bringing on board enhancements to school spaces, for instance, protecting the area immediately around schools, which is something Barcelona City Council is doing. When you know your child is in a school that is a safe place, that is in a safe area, that also gives you peace of mind. Then we have time and care. Obviously, we have to bear in mind all of the time used for care of self and care of others. We all are entitled to this kind of time. Next, we have time and participation. As Ariadna mentioned, we need spaces where we can listen, put our ear to the ground, and actually do it. And we have time and work. We will have some times devoted specifically to the NUS network. Then we have, we all know that we tend to organize our life around our working hours. Local governments, as Ariadna pointed out, are limited in what they can do about this, but there are things we can do, as you will see, through the NUS network. Time and services to citizens. That's about what kinds of services we're offering to citizens, so that, in particular, they have to devote less time to bureaucratic red tape involving the local government. And then we have time and sustainable cities, placing mobility at the center, the 15-minute city, and so on and so forth, so that we all have everything we need nearby, so that we have a lower impact on the city and on life.
So in this sense, the Time Compact has these 7 axes or main trunks, and then we have these 4 branches here. On one hand, everything has to do with public policies that are promoted by the council. This is our part here. As a council, we have to commit more and more to these issues and then make sure that our policies take it into account. It may be a more specific manner, just thinking about time, or including time as a cross-cutting axis in other policies. Then there are actions carried out by our member organizations, so these 300 organizations I mentioned before, and there's also a place to collect best practices and coordinate the actions carried out by others. So that's going outside what we do ourselves and reach out to others. And then another thing that's really important for us and for our Time Compact is the exchange of knowledge, best practices amongst public institutions. We're here a whole series of organizations, other entities also, so that we can mirror ourselves and others, and so that we all work along the same lines. So obviously, we're a public administration, but also with other organizations. And then another aspect, which is a big challenge, which is citizen awareness. Marta already spoke about this at the beginning in the end, when we talk about time, citizens at first do not really understand the issue, but however, everyone has their own problems with time, and that's something we all agree on. So, to explain what your council, what your municipality, and what other organizations, and what you yourself can do about this, all this has to do with citizen awareness. So, time is to be considered a dimension of social justice, and also, of course, take into account time poverty. And now, if we look towards our own organization, this council this year has already carried out more than 75 activities, taking into account time. This is the second year that we publish this report. It's available on our website. You also have outside some little dossiers explaining about it, but you have the link there. So we have public policies for time in 2022. We also have 2023, and we'll also have the report for 2024 soon. And on the website, you can access all the information about different actions, who's behind them, specific data. And it's also interesting to be able to collect all this information and analyze it. That's what we'll do at the council. And then, as we said, our Time Compact has a promoting group with over 20 organizations and that focus the work. So between of them, we think about what strategies have to be applied, what issues are out there, what are the concerns of the different organizations regarding the use of time. So we have meetings with the core group, and we have working meetings, but we also have our annual meeting of entities. This year will be in December in the Science neighborhood. Last year we talked about the time poverty, and we published a dossier which you have access to later about time poverty. But this year we'll be focusing on Chronos cities, and this is an event in which we even go beyond listening and sharing, and we look at specific practices, specific cases, always trying to search for inspiration and to collect ideas. And on our website, the page for time use, there is a list of these 300 organizations and what they're doing, and it's a way of making them visible, also showing all these entities that are committed to the better use of time. So it explains what they do, they make it visible, they collect information, we exchange information, and this is always up to date on our website and accessible to all. Now, something really important, like I say, this is a place for debate and exchange of information, as we said, but at the same time we offer training sessions and specific events. So we are asked for instance, this session on the 19th of June, how to guarantee digital disconnection in our companies. So we had all the different stakeholders involved here, trade unions and so on. And not just that we debate about this topic, but we also have small contributions of knowledge. We design tools and we create this real debate with organizations and other entities. When it comes to awareness raising and the creation of knowledge, this is what the Council of Barcelona also wants to do. We want to offer different tools, for example, a whole series of dossiers and studies on the use of time, for example, circadian rhythms, time and consumption. These are just examples. I think we already have published 19. You can download them. If you want a paper copy, you can also get a hard copy. So as I say, and the latest one we added to that was for time poverty. So it's a way of generating knowledge and disseminating it. Then on the other hand, we also have a quarterly bulletin called Barcelona a l'hora, Barcelona on time. If you subscribe, well, I always have to have their little pitch for our bulletin because Lou's here with us. And then if you access our website, you also see, apart from all this information, we like offering a news section to be up to date, and so that we serve as a benchmark for others, and we can provide in that news section what is being done. And then another thing that we have when it comes to creation of knowledge and awareness raising, and this is still a huge challenge, that's why we'll be working more on that this year. Another aspect that we're looking at is those public spheres that are often left outside our debate, but there's always a demand for it. For example, children and time, and for instance, the use of screens that we already heard about. And along the lines of our Compact for Time and the Time Use Week, this week, if the weather allows and there's no rain, we will have an activity. It's a game, a family game. It's free in a square, Plaza de las Glorias. And we will be playing this game called The Mystery of Lost Time, to see where we lose time, what role the screens play, and so that we can incorporate children in part of our reflection on the use of time and somehow the results that we see in public policies. So apart from that, as we said before, one of the aspects is time at work. And right back in 2006, we already created the NUST network of companies, which is specifically focused on time. It's part of the Time Compact. And as Adriana said before, of course, when it comes to organizing time at work, this is our part within the council, but there's also, of course, what companies do and how the town council or city council can coordinate with these companies. And this network, NUST, is still active. There are over 150 companies, organizations that that are part of it, and they generate the opinion about the impact and benefits of time policies and how we manage them. We try to foster a better organization of time at work, take into account personal necessities and, of course, competitiveness and productivity that's so important for companies, and to attain real change in order to ensure work-life balance and also the effectiveness when it comes to the use of time, to identify best practices and models that serve as a benchmark and offer experience and knowledge. So we act as a facilitator, but we listen to see what they want, what they need, what the companies do in everyday lives, and always trying to foster change. And in this sense, what does this network do, the KNUST? There is also a core team. There's 150 companies in all, but there is a core team there. We meet on a regular basis. The last meeting was not very long ago, where we share and exchange opinions. We reflect upon the situation, see what's happening in different sectors. It's really interesting because there's local companies, but from many, many different fields, sectors, and there is common ground, but a lot of differences also. So we try to look at both similarities and differences. And tomorrow we will have a presentation of some of the companies from our network, and they act as ambassadors. These are like whenever the city council has an event, we ask them to come in and explain what they're doing, what works for them, what is lacking, so what needs are still outstanding. And then we have the little training sessions again. For instance, if there is a change, something that's very successful at the time, how to implement teleworking, remote working at the time, in different types of sectors and companies of different situations. So when when the new Act on Use of Time comes into force and how that's going to work, we'll offer training on that also. We also have a yearly meeting, usually focusing on a specific topic, and we're bringing experts to talk about it, and we also listen there. And we also like very much to accompany the companies as the city council. So these 150 companies all have a space on our website with their name, with their logo. It's a way of acknowledging what they're doing, and it serves as inspiration for the companies. We offer the basic information about the company and also what actions are being put in place. So I think this is something that we have to do so that the information goes even further, and also so companies themselves can both become visible themselves and also shine light on what they're doing. And then, you also have information outside on this other project of all the projects we're doing, but I like this one very much, which is a service that we offer, a consultancy service for equality and time organization. We do this together with Barcelona Activa, with our office for companies. Is tailor-made, is made prepared by experts, people from different sectors. We offer free consultations so that companies can implement the best practices. You can ask for it via website, and all kinds of organizations have participated, and we heard from all the companies that they need information, but then they also need information about how to implement the measures, and that's why we offer this service, in order to hold their hands during those initial steps when it comes to implementing time policies. And if you want to stay in touch, you have our website, barcelona.cat/uses-del-temps, and once again, our quarterly bulletin and newsletter. It's really interesting. Please subscribe. And of course, our emails here if there's anything you should need.
També dir-vos pel públic internacional.
And also for our international guests, I'd like to say that I don't have everything on our website, but most of the things on our website is in English also. You can find it in English. Good. I love the case of the Barcelona City Council, because not only are they carrying out these activities at a horizontal manner within the council, but also taking it beyond the council. And now we have a bit of time left over before we end the session to hear questions or any comments, because the idea was to have a more workshop sort of format for this session. So if there's anyone who wishes to say anything, we have a question over here.
Si vols...
So thank you very much. I'm Julien from Strasbourg. I have more of a comment, unless that's something you have in mind and would be able to bring me some answers to that. But I feel that when you see time policies as a transversal challenge, and when you want to have the upper levels of the administration tackling this issue and this perspective, the more you think about it, the more you must think about the other challenges that we have that must also use a transversal perspective. Because if you don't do that, right now in Strasbourg, we have so many team leaders who have to put put glasses, gender glasses to look at the issues, and then geographic glasses, and then climate glasses, and so time glasses, and at some point there's not so many glasses you can put on your face without becoming crazy and have a too heavy workload. And so I feel that the challenge that we have to go further is to implement some new way of designing public policies that's not only about time, but on all those challenges that we face in cities. I was thinking about the public lights that we are working on right now, and this guy is handling public lights. It's switching it off and on. He has so many things to think about already, but we want him to take into account women's issues and inclusion and night policies and night animals, because we want them to be able to be more of them, and bikes, because we want people to be able to bike. So if we don't take into account his perspective, which is to have one material affair to deal with, and put together some kind of new methodology to take into account all of those aspects. I think there's, in Strasbourg, we are at a point where time policies are not going as fast as we want because we've put so many efforts into gender matters and geographic and social affairs and climate. So time cannot be over the top of his workload. And I think that there's a challenge for us and this network and other network to work together to define a new way of designing public policies. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Bueno, soc Vicent Borràs del...
I'm Vicente Borràs from the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and I just have some comments because I would not like to shine the spotlight on you right now, but as Ines already commented, when it comes to time studies and working with the council and research, I've been doing that since 1996, so we are delighted with all the work that's been carried out, and we like the contact between the political level and the academic world. But I feel very frustrated because there is already enough knowledge accumulated that shows that if you leave work earlier, that means you have co-responsibility between men and women, and if you have to stay on weekends, that has an impact on certain parts of societies, especially ethnic minorities, women, of course, and so on. And so all these different hats that we are wearing as for time policies, I think there are 4 that go against the policies that we actually have. Last Sunday, well, for example, all shops were open. We've gone from just 4 Sundays a year where shops are open to 20 now. So how's that going to fit in with life and work balance and sustainability? What if you have shops that are open, that favors consumerism? So we just seem to be going round and round in circles for over 20 circles now, and then all of a sudden we have policies that go completely against the grain of all other scientific evidence. So it's as if people are just taking the mickey out of you, because you have these ideas, these policies, and then you walk out the street and think, well, what's going on here? We have all the shops open on the weekend, on a Sunday, and it's all female workers, of course. So, and this just goes against all the hard work we've done for years and years. And, well, maybe you should pass this on to other politicians and say, well, what does this mean? We're doing all this work, and then when we alter these other laws, how is that going to impact what we're doing? Because we have to say companies have to have certain policies and so on, but if then we have the large department stores open, such as a Corte Inglés, well, of course, all the other shops nearby also have to open on a weekend and late at night. And how's that going to impact? So if I'm a worker, a female worker at one of these places, well, obviously, I wouldn't be very happy about this situation. Well, I really can't add much to what has been said. As I said, that's not my responsibility. I think that the only thing that we can do is continue bit by bit trying to prove these things. But very often, as you said, the administration can only go as far, and there's some things that we may not be able to have an impact on. So I know it's frustrating to do this work, but it does help with some things. For example, we have the new Act on Use of Time, but of course we can't do some things which we can't do. So, and of course we have the issue of different powers of competences in one place here. And then going back to what Julien was saying, yes, it's true that we have to take many different approaches or views to this, and these are complex situations, and there are many different parts to it, and we still haven't managed to find out how to make all these parts fit in between the administration, also within the administration itself, in order to ensure, as we said yesterday, that we, with one policy where we're just wearing our productivity glasses, or maybe our climate change glasses, or gender glasses, or our time glasses, and then in turn see that we're not having a negative impact on one of the other spheres. And I do believe that we have not managed to solve this completely yet. In some areas, because we have more examples, we've been working more, it's easier and it's easier to find the solutions. But in other cases, we have to go outside our usual way of working, and it's a bit more difficult.
Question that you were like to add to this discussion, but I don't think there is a matter of glasses. It's a matter first of awareness and political priorities. No, when we have a new government, we have new priorities, and I think that it's a matter to, first of all, to make understand to our politicians that this is a priority and why and which benefits this will bring, and then to explain to the staff that you are working inside of a city council that that's a priority line, no? And in terms of time policies, because of course if you put too many glasses you will not see anything, right? So I would say it's a terms of priority, and on the other side, that's why yesterday we were talking about the figure of time chief officer. It doesn't mean that a person just can be a time chief officer. Maybe it's part-time equality office and the other part-time gender office or mobility and equality. But there needs to be someone inside of the political administration that concentrates and coordinates the views on time. And every time that you do an intervention, as the one that you were saying, let's discuss it with the person, the director that has the responsibilities of time. I think that that's better than asking all the administration to put glasses of time, because not everybody will be able to do that. We need to generate training to them, we need to generate awareness, but it needs to be one person that is coordinating these policies, that has this policy view as a priority. Otherwise, I will think that it will not work. And in Barcelona, I think that you mentioned, no, that there is 77, I saw? 75 time policies per year, no? Which is a lot. But of course, there are still some areas that are not aligned, no, with these priorities. So I think that what you are saying, no, that you are generating awareness so these decisions can be reversed. But there are 75 decisions that go in the direction that you want to go. So I think that that's good news.
Any other final question? If not, it's almost time. Okay. Doncs, si us sembla, ho deixem.
Okay, so we'll leave it here for now. So we'll bring the last session for today to an end here, the last one at least here in this hall. I'll invite the members of the local regional network, because we didn't before.
I will invite the members of the local and regional governments network that are here to go outside on the photo call we have, and we take a picture as network because we forgot on the assembly. We were hungry. So thank you all for being here, for listening to us. And brief reminder, I change back to Catalan.
So a brief reminder, tomorrow we will be in the BIS Barcelona room. We'll be spending a day on social and productive sectors in the Catalan society. So I'll invite all of you from Catalonia to come to this meeting. I think it'll be really interesting, and we will be focusing more on what we've already heard here and what has been done, especially work on working hours. So those of you who come here tomorrow, see you tomorrow, and if not, have a good trip back. Safe travels.